You know how sometimes a headline flashes across your screen and it feels like it's happening, well, somewhere else entirely, sort of disconnected from our daily lives?
Hmm.
But then you start pulling at the threads and you realize it's actually woven into the very real experiences of individuals, people just like us, whose lives are being just dramatically altered by decisions made, somewhere far away.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's exactly the feeling I had when I really started to look into Uganda's 2023 Anti-Homosexuality Act. This isn't just some abstract legal thing happening in courtrooms.
Not at all. It's a huge event. It's reshaping their society, the daily reality for a lot of people there.
And we've both spent a fair bit of time digging into the reports, the analyses around this act, right?
We have, and look, our goal today isn't just to skim the surface. We want to really get into the core parts of this law, understand what it actually says.
Right. And grapple with the consequences, which are immediate and, frankly, deeply disturbing.
Exactly. And maybe trace back some of the factors, the influences that led to it being created in the first place.
And also, importantly, acknowledge the people who are fighting back. Because there is resistance, incredibly grave resistance.
Absolutely. Despite the immense danger they face.
Okay, so let's dive into the specifics of the law itself, because that's where you really start to see the sheer scale of it all.
Yeah, the details are, well, they're stark. Uganda already had laws against same-sex relations, colonial-era stuff.
Right, leftovers from the British Empire, weren't they?
Mostly, yes. But this 2023 Act, it really ramps things up, introduces new provisions that are chilling. Basically, at its core, consensual same-sex acts are now punishable by life imprisonment.
Life imprisonment, just let that sink
A
in.
lifetime. And then there's this other category they created called aggravated homosexuality.
That sounds ominous
Mm.
and vague.
It is vague.
Yep.
And that's part of the problem. The ambiguity is worrying. It covers things like repeat offenses, they say, or, and this is particularly awful, if one person in the relationship has a disability.
Wait, so if someone has a disability, any relationship is automatically aggravated?
That's the implication. It essentially assumes they can't consent, stripping away their autonomy, their right to have a relationship. It's deeply offensive.
And the penalty for that?
The death penalty.
The death penalty.
Yeah.
For who you love, potentially compounded by having a disability. It's hard to comprehend.
It is. And the law doesn't stop there, does it? There's this whole piece about promoting homosexuality.
Yeah, what does that even mean in practice?
Well, it's incredibly broad. It seems designed to silence anyone who supports LGBTQ plus rights.
Yeah.
Activists, obviously, allies who speak out. Even a landlord renting a room to a same-sex couple could potentially face jail time.
For renting an apartment, how long?
Up to 20 years, according to the law. It's a way to systematically shut down any support network, any positive representation.
Wow. And then there's that mandatory reporting part. That feels particularly insidious, like turning citizens into informants.
Exactly. It basically says if you know someone is in a same-sex relationship and you don't report it, you could face 6 months in jail or a hefty fine.
So it forces people to betray their friends, their neighbors.
It creates this climate of suspicion. It actively damages community trust.
Yeah.
A real chilling effect on just basic human connection and decency.
It paints a really grim picture of daily life for LGBTQ plus Ugandans. And it's not theoretical, is it? Human Rights Watch did that report. They're putting our lives at risk. The title says it all.
It does. That report really documents how this legally sanctioned homophobia is just becoming normal. It's seeping into everything. People are living in constant fear.
And the personal stories in there are just brutal. Like Florence, the transgender woman attacked after a court hearing.
Yeah, Florence's story is harrowing. Attacked, beaten, subjected to horrific slurs, not just anti-LGBTQ plus ones, but ethnic slurs too.
So it wasn't random.
No, it seems clearly linked to this climate the law has created. A climate where attacking someone like Florence feels permissible, maybe even encouraged to some people. And there's little chance of justice.
And then Derrick Chimera's experience, trying to run a safe house, getting lured into a trap.
That story highlights the danger, doesn't it? He thought he was helping someone, a lesbian woman needing assistance, walks into a mob attacking a man they thought was gay.
And then they turned on Derrick.
Yeah, just for being there, for trying to
Yeah.
help. It shows how even basic compassion towards LGBTQ plus people is now seen as suspicious, dangerous even.
It's terrifying, and beyond the violence, it's hitting basic needs like healthcare access.
That's a huge concern. People are now too afraid to go to clinics, to hospitals. They fear being outed by doctors or nurses, being reported, arrested.
So treatable illnesses could go untreated. Public health must be taking a hit.
Absolutely. It just widens existing health gaps. And then
Yeah.
you have things like the shutdown of SMOG, sexual minorities, Uganda.
Right, the government refused to register them.
Yeah, simply because their name contained sexual minorities.
Yeah.
It's Kafkaesque. The very name identifying the community they serve is deemed illegal, so they can't operate, can't provide that vital support.
It really makes you wonder, how did things get this extreme? This law didn't just appear out of thin air.
No, definitely not. As we said, Uganda had old colonial laws. But there was also that previous attempt in 2014, remember? A similar harsh law was passed, but then struck down by the courts.
On a technicality, wasn't it? Not on the substance.
Exactly. So the underlying sentiment was clearly still there. And the support for this 2023 act in Parliament was overwhelming. Like 444 out of 557 MPs voted for it.
Wow. That's a huge majority. And religious leaders played a significant role, didn't they?
A very public role. You had figures like Archbishop Stephen Kazimba warning young people about bad groups, luring them into gay activity.
Like luring them, such loaded language.
And Bishop Joshua Lair openly vowing to fight all forms of homosexuality. The Interreligious Council of Uganda, a major umbrella group, actively backed the bill. Their influence is considerable.
And politicians, too. Were they fanning the flames?
Some definitely were. The deputy speaker, Thomas Tayebwa, was making claims about, like, hidden clauses in international aid agreements promoting homosexuality. No evidence, of course.
Just stirring up fear.
And calling for public money to go to religious groups, specifically to fight homosexuality. That kind of rhetoric from the top really legitimizes the discrimination.
So the law passes. What happened immediately after? The reports sound horrific.
They were. Within like the first 24 hours, reports started coming in of physical and sexual violence, including, horrifyingly, accounts of rape being used as some kind of twisted conversion therapy.
That's just sickening.
It is. And beyond that direct violence, the ripple effects were immediate. People getting evicted by landlords.
Losing their jobs.
Losing jobs, yeah. Being denied health care outright. Blackmail attempts went up. Online harassment surged.
And the mental health impact must be immense.
Huge increases in anxiety, depression, even suicidal thoughts reported within the community. It's created an environment of constant stress and fear.
Which explains why people started fleeing the country. The numbers seeking asylum in South Africa, for instance.
Yeah, organizations there saw a sudden spike. One group reported, I think, 22 Ugandans arriving, seeking asylum within just a week of the law passing, and dozens more asking for help to get out.
People forced to leave everything behind, just out of fear for their lives.
It's that desperate.
Going back to that aggravated homosexuality definition for a second, the part about people with disabilities, it just feels so fundamentally wrong.
It's profoundly wrong. It completely denies their agency, their ability to consent, their right to love and intimacy. It's built on this incredibly discriminatory premise, dehumanizing, really.
What about the rest of the world? Has there been any meaningful international response?
There's been a lot of condemnation, certainly, statements from the UN, various governments, and some actions followed. The U.S. put travel restrictions on some Ugandan officials.
Okay.
The World Bank paused new funding for projects in Uganda. PEPFAR, the big U.S. AIDS relief program, delayed an assessment on how the law impacts HIV services.
So some pressure, but has it changed anything on the ground? Has the Ugandan government responded?
Publicly, they've been quite defiant, largely dismissed the criticism. And Human Rights Watch, for instance, said the government just didn't respond to their inquiries when they were researching their report. Silence.
But amidst all this, there is that resistance we mentioned earlier. People within Uganda are pushing back.
Absolutely. It's incredibly brave. Activists like Frank Mugisha have been very public, very vocal, despite the risks. And they launched a legal challenge, didn't they?
Yeah, they took it to the Constitutional Court late last year, December 2023.
Arguing the whole act violates fundamental human rights, both Ugandan constitutional rights and international law.
And the court ruled on that in April this year, 2024. But it wasn't exactly a clear victory.
No, it was. Well, you called it a mixed bag earlier, and that's right. They did strike down a couple of things.
Like the mandatory reporting.
Yes, that's gone. And the specific bit restricting healthcare access based on sexual orientation. So, small wins.
But the main parts, life imprisonment, the death penalty.
They upheld those. The core criminalization, including the death penalty for aggravated homosexuality, remains in place. So it felt like tinkering around the edges while leaving the main structure intact. like putting a bandage on a broken leg, as someone described it.
So the fight definitely isn't over.
Not by a long shot.
Yeah.
The activists are already planning next steps, appealing to higher courts in Uganda, potentially looking at regional or international human rights bodies. It's going to be a long struggle.
And it's crucial to see this in the bigger picture, isn't it? Uganda isn't alone in having laws like this.
No, sadly not. While Uganda's law is particularly extreme in its scope, especially with the death penalty provision being so broad and the promotion clause, something like 67 countries worldwide still criminalize same-sex relations.
67, that's a lot.
It is. And several others also retain the death penalty for same-sex acts, even if it's not always applied. So Uganda is a stark reminder of a much wider global problem.
And there's a risk of this spreading regionally.
That's a real concern. We've seen politicians in neighboring Kenya actually praising Uganda's law, talking about introducing similar legislation there.
Oh, wow. So a potential domino effect in East Africa.
It's a possibility activists are very worried about. It would be devastating for LGBTQ plus people across the region.
Listening to all this, it can feel a bit overwhelming, maybe helpless. Is there anything people listening, from outside Uganda can actually do?
Yeah, there are definitely things. Supporting the groups working directly on the ground is huge. Organizations like Let's Walk Uganda, PFL-EGI Uganda, they need resources to help people with safety, legal aid, basic needs.
Okay, direct support. What else?
Advocating to our own governments, pushing for stronger diplomatic pressure, maybe targeted sanctions on officials responsible for these abuses, questioning non-essential aid, making it clear this isn't acceptable.
And just raising awareness, right? Talking about it.
Absolutely. Just keeping the spotlight on it. The more people understand the human reality, the human cost of laws like this, the harder it is for governments to maintain them without facing consequences, making sure these stories are heard.
It really has been sobering digging into this, Uganda's Anti-Homosexuality Act. It's such a stark illustration of how prejudice can be formalized into law with devastating consequences for real people.
It truly is. It's a tragedy unfolding right now, criminalizing love, criminalizing identity.
Yeah.
But, amidst that darkness, the courage of the activists, the allies in Uganda,
Yeah.
it's genuinely remarkable. That resilience offers some hope.
It does, and it really forces you to think, doesn't it, about how hate, when it gets institutionalized like this in one place, can echo outwards. And it makes you ask, what's our responsibility individually and collectively when we see injustice like this unfolding? That's something to really sit with, I think.